with Glen, one of the great things about Glen is that he doesn't hold every shot dear, and he's such a generous animator and teacher, and generous with his knowledge, but also generous with up and coming animators and giving them the shots that are going to help them develop their careers. There's animators, supervising animators out there that won't do that. They'll keep the big juicy shots for themselves.
Yeah.
For whether they because they don't think anyone can do it as well, or they don't want to risk it, or they want the accolades, whatever. But Glen, he was never like that. And I remember I was, I barely become an animator at that point. I worked on Rescuers Down Under, but I was more of a junior animator. And I'd worked on Roller Coaster Rabbit, which was a Roger Rabbit animated short. And that's where I got promoted to animator. So I had very few shots on there. So I really didn't have that much under my belt. And so Glen decided to give me this sequence early on in the film where the Beast and Belle are fighting in front of the fire. He's just been injured by the wolves after she tried to escape, and she's trying to bandage him, and that hurts, and back and forth, and they're yelling and arguing, and it's just this big juicy acting sequence. And it's only about a minute and a half, but it's a nice chunk of animation. And so he wanted me to animate that, and I remember going through it, going, "Oh my God, how? I don't know what I'm going to do." And but we just took it one step at a time. And I remember flying out to California. It was I missed my son's first birthday because of this, but we went out. I went out to California, and I sat with Glen for 3 weeks, and all I did was thumbnail. That's all I did. We just sat there and figured out the choreography, the emotion, the acting of the entire sequence. I did thousands and thousands of little sketches and strung them all together. And after 3 weeks, I had the whole thing figured out so that I could go back to Florida and animate it. You guys got to, the people listening, you got to realize how it was done back then, with long distance. We didn't have video conferencing. We didn't have, barely had faxing. Yeah. Definitely you couldn't fax anything of a drawing, and that didn't work that way. And so what we would do, over long distance, is if I was working with Glen and I had a shot I wanted him to see, I would animate. I'd do a rough animation of the shot, and then I would shoot it on 3/4 inch tape, and then I would take the tape and my drawings and put them in a FedEx box and send them across the country. And they would go overnight, and it would be a 2-day turnaround. So while that's gone, I'd have to pull out another shot and get working on that, and then get that done and send that out. Once that's out, then I'm getting information on the shot I sent out the day before. This is how we made the whole movie. And so it was insane. And but it worked. And so anyway, I thumbnailed that whole sequence and came back to Florida and started animating with Mark Henn. Mark Henn, who's also just an amazing animator, who's done pretty much every princess through the 90s. He was animating Belle through the sequence, and I was animating Beast. And so we would go back and forth. And every pass that I'd finish, I'd pack up my drawings and send them out to Glen, and he would draw over them, and we'd have a phone conversation, and he'd say, do this and think about it more like that. And I just worked my way through, and I think it took about 3 months to animate the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I finally got it done, and the directors loved it, and several people mistook it for Glen's work, which really put a feather in my cap. I love that. And but the biggest thing for me was how much I grew out of that experience, how much my animation grew, the way I looked at animation, the way I approached it. Just the idea of taking something that seemed so far outside my abilities and impossible, and just knowing that you just got to start at the bottom and start chiseling, and you can come out on top. That was the biggest thing I learned on that. And I tried, that's one of the biggest things I try to teach now with animation, is no matter how complex or difficult or whatever, if you just break it down and start looking at it from logical points of view, you can get through your shots. And and it really affected my entire career after that. That